Captain Peter Cutty, South Korea. This is my briefing room on the threshold of runway 08 left to Muscat. We're going to fly a right-hand traffic pattern at 1,500 feet above the airport. The first officer will be pilot flying. Before we go ahead and do that, let's just have a look at what we see here. We're on the flight deck now, and we have the nav display set up with the runway, and we're on a 5 nautical mile scale, and with a 90-degree abeam, the threshold of runway 08, and a 2.5 nautical mile circle. We'll talk about that in a second on the setup. We're going to use the auto throttles for the initial setting of takeoff thrust. We're going to use heading select to start with. In the airplane, when you're flying it, you'll be flying without auto throttles once takeoff thrust is set, and without command bars. Today you'll see them in view because I'm by myself on the flight deck. The whole idea of this exercise is to get to know the pitch and thrust references on the 737 in a flap configuration. We're going to be taking off with flap 1 at TO2. We're going to select flaps 5 and maintain flaps 5 speed at 800 feet. We'll maintain flaps 5 throughout until we configure for the approach and full stop landing. Let's go to PowerPoint and have a look at this. So the actual setup is done with the assistance of your instructor. He would set up the iOS panel this way, and if you notice there's a wind there at 90 degrees. Today we're going to have a calm wind. TO2, flaps 1, set the speeds as directed by the instructor, and barrel bug set to airport elevation plus 500 feet, which is 525, and on the barrel bugs, and you can see that we've set it already. All right. The origin in the FMCCU to set it up of OOMS destination the same, and the arrivals page, and select the runway 08 left, and on the legs line select 08 left to the top, and then to the scratch pad, and then fix page 1, and then line selected to the top, and a radial of 174/2.5. And map center 10 nautical mile scale. That's a suggested way to set up the aircraft the way you just saw it. We'll go back and have another quick look at it. There's the 174 radial. So when we talk about it, and 2.5 nautical miles has been set. So that we want to end up downwind at 2.5 nautical miles. Let's have a look at just a quick overview. And this is file, I should say, is available in Google Drive for your reference in my package. So we're going to talk about exactly how we set it up. So let's go back and get right into the PowerPoint. The airport is, of course, Muscat. 084 is the runway track. We're going to fly a right-hand pattern. All right. So flying the pattern, takeoff and climb tracking the extended center line. So today runway heading will be the extended center line because there is no wind. A little quick formula: when you're applying wind for a crosswind at 90 degrees is 1/3 of the wind speed in the lower levels. 1/3 of the wind speed at 90 degrees will be your actual drift. So if in this particular case, if we were set, let's say, at 20 knots, 7 degrees of drift. and that works out fine. But today, no wind. All right. At 800 feet, we're going to do four things. We're going to pitch down to 10 degrees above the horizon, roll on 20 degrees of bank as we are calling for flaps 5 and start reducing the thrust towards 60% N1, a constant thrust reduction, minimize the rate of climb and to level off. Things happen very fast. I've got TO2 set and we're very light. So we're going to be at 800 feet very quickly. I'll try to stop the whole process at 800 feet if I can, and point out a few things and talk about this again. So four things. That's pilot flying. Pilot monitoring will select flaps 5 and then select the MCP speed bug to flaps 5 speed, which will be the white bug. We're very close to the white bug. The pilot monitoring will move the landing gear lever off when the lights, the landing gear lights are off. He'll move the landing gear lever to the off position, set the downwind heading because it's a continuous turn at 20 degrees of bank in a calm wind condition. So the pilot monitoring is very busy. No checklist below close to the ground. You follow your company SOPs, but when you're with me, we'll brief on this, and there's really not too much to do. The landing gear lever goes to the off position, the engine starts, switches, stay at continuous, because you're going to be in a landing procedure maneuver very, very shortly. So basically, that's all that has to be done. We're going to do a full stop landing. Your instructor would brief you on touch and goes at some other time, and I'll brief you on touch and goes later. The pattern takes approximately 6 minutes and 45 seconds from beginning of takeoff roll to touchdown. So everything happens fast, and the whole idea for this exercise is for new trainees to get accustomed to power pitch and trim, power pitch, trim, power pitch, trim. You put the airplane where you want it with elevators, the correct pitch reference. You trim off the forces and you adjust the speed with thrust. What pitch references? Well, for 60 tons, close to what we are today, 6 degrees of pitch and 60% N1 at flaps 5. Ooh. Where did I get those figures? Those figures are in the back of the QRH. Excuse me. Under airspeed unreliable. So if you want to learn your airplane, that's where you go as far as the thrust settings, etc. All right, so that's what we talked about here. And this PowerPoint was set up so that, in Google Drive, so you can look at it, to give you an idea of how to fly the operation. Once we're downwind, and of course it's all done manually, all right, manual thrust and manual flying. I have to engage the auto flight systems today because I'm by myself on the flight deck. But I want you to remember the power and pitch references and when we do what. Forget about the command bars in view and forget about the auto throttles. All right, it's a manual operation. Okay, so here we are here. As far as the timing is concerned, downwind the timing is broken down into 3 different parts. 45 seconds broken down into 20 seconds, 20 seconds, and 5 seconds. I'm talking nil wind. One of you or both of you should have prog 2.4 or 2.5 depending on your FMC update. That is where you can see the crosswind, tailwinds, etc. And you would make adjustments in the real world for headwind, tailwind by using half the headwind or tailwind and applying it accordingly to those defaulted 0 wind times of 20, 20, and 5 seconds. All right. So let's go to the next page. Once the airplane symbol is halfway through that green radial, when the airplane symbol is halfway through it, start timing. Pilot flying, just fly the airplane. Call timing, pilot monitoring will do it for you. At 20 seconds, pilot monitoring will say 20 seconds. Pilot flying, call for gear down, flaps 15, speed brakes armed, in this case, a full stop landing. So the pilot monitoring will select the gear down, flaps 15, and select flaps 15 speed. Pilot flying, all you do is fly the airplane. Remember that pitch reference I gave you for 60 tons. You'll be very close to 6 degrees of pitch, very close. And try to use your flight path vector. We'll talk about that at some other time down the line once you understand how the flight path vector works. The exercise today is mainly using the aircraft borescope or the symbol and placing it where you want it, trimming off the forces, and maintain your altitude and maintain your speed. Good exercise. All right. At the end of the first 20 seconds, we've done that. At the end of the second 20 seconds, and then it's landing flaps. So flaps 30, set VREF 30 plus 5. Pilot monitoring will do that. At the end of the 45 seconds, pilot flying start a 25-degree bank descending turn to the right. Descend at 500 feet initially per minute, 500 feet per minute. Turn to a 90-degree heading, which is base leg, in this case, heading 354. And look for the popping. Once you see the poppy usable, then adjust your rate of descent in accordance with the poppy. You'll find around 850 feet a minute, but remember, this is not an IFR approach. This is a visual approach. So your eyes are outside, inside, outside, inside. When to start the turn to base leg, you've got a beautiful 30-second trend vector. When the tip of it touches the extended center line, start your turn. And if you keep the tip of it on the extended center line, you'll roll out on the extended center line, as that 30-second trend vector actually knows the wind and knows the ground speed. So it's a great tool to use. But don't focus so much just on that. This is a technique to make sure that you are going to end up on the center line. Remember, this is a visual approach. Once you roll wings level, you should be around 700 feet above the ground, according to the FCTM. And you'll find that you will be. And then fly the airplane to touchdown. We're going to do all of that and get close to touchdown and then stop the session because I can't land this software. But you'll get the picture all the way to over the threshold. All right, so let's go right into the airplane and let's get going. So here we are here, and you've seen that, so we'll have go up and have a little look at the outside, and we'll slide across to the first officer side. I'll be using Command A only because of the way the software is set up, and just remember what I briefed on. All right, let's go down and release the parking brakes. Incidentally, the parking brakes are never set on a runway, and your instructor will tell you that. N1 toga. Check.
Positive rate.
All right, here we are. We'll just have a look. We'll zoom in here. We're coming up to 800 feet very shortly. We're on the extended center line, and we're climbing at 1,600 feet per minute. So we've got quite a rate of climb. And we're going to start our turn at 800 feet. And remember, we've got 4 items to do at 800 feet. So I'm going to be moving rather quickly to try to do this on the software. And we're going to turn to the right. We'll start the turn to the right. Because it's a 180-degree turn, the pilot monitoring won't set 264 immediately because the airplane won't know where to turn. So we'll start the turn to the right with the heading bug and then continue it all the way around to a heading of 264 because it's a 0 wind. And that will parallel us at 2.5 nautical miles, providing we use 20 degrees of bank, and I've got 20 degrees of bank set. So there we go. There we are. So I'm going to go ahead and release the aircraft, and we'll do those 4 functions. We'll try to get them all done. That is flaps 5 as we're pitching down to 10 degrees. Well, the autopilot's going to do that for us. And start the turn to heading 264 degrees and thrust coming back. A continuous thrust reduction to maintain flaps 5 speed. Let's see how it works out. But just before we do that, I've just made the settings so we can actually start at 800 feet. So I'll unpause and then we should start to turn.
1,000 to go. 1,000.
So we're in the turn and we should be selecting flap 5 and the thrust is coming back. So you see how this is working out. It's working out very sweet, actually. We're at 20 degrees of bank. We're at 1,600 feet. And if you notice, I've got the flight path vector here. We're on the horizon. And if you look at my flight path vector video, you'll see how to use it. But right now, we are right at flaps 5 speed, and it looks like we're going to roll out very close to 2.5 nautical miles downwind. I set the Gear F30, by the way, while we were paused, so that we can actually sit here and appreciate this procedure and how well it works. So we're going to have a look when we're downwind here outside and see exactly how things are shaping up. The pilot monitoring moved the landing gear lever off. The engine start switches have stayed continuous, and the pilot monitoring has done a quick check. So let's just pause here and have a look at this. So there we are, parallel to runway 08 left. We're looking outside. It's a night view. There is a runway, and we're exactly 2.5 nautical miles away. So this is working out very sweet. So we're downwind, and we'll go dynamic again. And when the a beam radial, 174 radial, is halfway through the aircraft symbol, we'll start a timing. And we'll do that with the clocks on the aircraft. I'll use my chronometer here. And nothing in the first 20 seconds, as we mentioned before. And then at the beginning of the second 20 seconds, gear down, plus 15, and speed brake arm. If you notice your pitch, we're at 6.5 degrees of pitch, so very close to those references I spoke about. And we're right at 2.5 nautical miles, so we're very, that works out, the math works out very, very good. All right, we'll start the timing now. All right, there's 20 seconds. So I'm going to pause here and configure with the gear down flaps 15. So we've configured your down plus 15 and flat 15 speed set. And as we approach the 40-second mark, we'll configure for flaps 30. We're just about at that point now. We'll just pause and I'll do that. And we've selected flap 30, VREF 30 plus 5, and we're starting a base leg turn now. And we'll go ahead and start down. Here we are at VREF 30 plus 5 knots, 354 the heading, and we are starting down at 500 feet a minute, and we'll wait until the trend vector touches the center line before we start our turn onto final. All right, so there is the trend vector touching the tip, and we are starting down at a little greater than 800 feet a minute because I believe we are probably slightly high. We'll go and have a look at that. So let's go up and have a look at
1,000
the
feet stabilized, Mr. Birch, altitude set.
outside. And there is the runway environment. And we're looking good with 2 red and 2 white, just a little bit to the inside, and we'll get back to the center line. Now, if you notice, we are wings level. And if you notice our position, we're just about 3 miles. They're just coming up to the 2.5 nautical mile ring. And if you notice our radio altitude, we're 700 feet above the ground, right bang on, according to the FCTM. And our rate of descent around here is approximately 850 feet per minute. So we're looking good. This is how to fly a visual traffic pattern. I'm going to conclude it here because I can't fly it manually to the threshold, but this maneuver is a great maneuver for your hands and feet, we say, for pitch and thrust and trimming. And you're going to do plenty of these in a touch and go manner in your training. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and we'll see you in the next. Thanks for watching.